Inspiring Uganda. The official broadcaster of Non-Aligned Movement and G77 Summits 2024.
A new dawn on Behind the Headlines with me, Timothy Nyangweso. Every Wednesday, live in our studios in the heart of Kampala. We have conversations that have analysis, explanation, but not every truth is fact, and not every fact is truth. Every Wednesday, 10 p.m. on your public broadcaster.
All on your public broadcaster, UBC, Inspiring Uganda.
Good evening and welcome to Behind the Headlines. My name is Timothy Nyangweso. Happy New Year for those that are joining us for the first time. But a lot is happening in this country, especially Uganda becoming the spectacle of the world, especially with the summits and the conferences happening. As we become the jewel in that crown, we evaluate what has been happening, especially with the 27th Speakers Conference that has just ended. What benefit has it been to this country? What impact has it had in the short term, medium, and the long term? But let me get to the formidable panel that is with us this evening to be able to discuss that and more. On my extreme left, Member of Parliament representing the people of Nyabushozi, Honorable Wilson Kajwenje. Good evening, sir.
Very good evening to you, and good evening to you, viewers. And Happy New Year.
Thank you for representing. I saw what was happening in Ushere. Well done there.
Thank you for appreciating.
Next to him, he's one I am hosting for the first time, Chris Obore, the Director of Communications at the Parliament of Uganda. Good evening, sir, and how are you?
Thank you, Mr. Nyangweso, for inviting me. Good evening, listeners. I think today you have trapped me to be fired by my bosses. You have set me up to be judged by my bosses. I don't know whether I'll have a job tomorrow.
You will have a job tomorrow. Next to him, I'll introduce him later on with the new title he has, but Honorable Paul Omara, Member of Parliament for Otuke County. Good evening, sir, and Happy New Year.
Good evening, Timothy, and good evening, viewers. Happy to be back.
Congratulations on now being a paramount chief for your clan, and all congratulations from the team here.
When you meet me, you bow. That is there.
But congratulations anyway.
Thank you very much.
There should be a name, a chief of...
It's a Witong of Onywale Pieda. That's the paramount chief of the clan of Onywale Pieda. A big clan in Lango sub-region, and spanning Acholi and West Nile.
Congratulations.
We are such a big team.
How can it not be in test when we gave birth to you?
We'll leave that conversation for another day, but I'll pick up a gentleman that has been away for a bit of a while, especially end of last year. Honorable Martin Ojara Mapenduzi, a Member of Parliament representing the people of Laibi Bandege. Good evening, sir, and Happy New Year.
Good evening, and happy to be back. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you too.
Thank you.
As usual, we have Professor Sarah Sali, the Dean at the School of Women and Gender Affairs at Makerere University. Good evening.
Good evening, Timothy, and good evening, viewers. Happy to be back. Thank you.
It's good to have all of you here, and you can be part of the show. Go to our YouTube channel. Let us know what you think. Drop your comment by text or WhatsApp on the number 0709 60 25 92. Let us know what you're thinking, or go to our X handle, hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines. We're going to do this a little bit different before we get into the gist of our conversation, especially the outcomes, the impact, and also what we expect Parliament will be receiving from the 27th Speakers Conference that just concluded on the 6th of January there. But also it will be putting a precursor on what will be happening next week with the twin summits that will be there. We want to make a comment on the President's speech last night, but also tickle some of the people that are on the budget and finance to tell us exactly what the Edges report looks like, which is telling us about 10,000 ghost workers and about 53 billion shillings being spent there. I will start basically with Honorable Mara, especially on the Attorney General's report that was received by the Speaker that handed it over to the new Leader of Opposition. And really very alarming things inside there. Your thoughts on it?
Timothy, I should confess that, you know me, I don't discuss matters for which I have no knowledge or fact. I haven't read the report. The report was handed over to the Speaker of Parliament. and she has handed it over to the Parliamentary Committee on, I think, PAC, central government. I believe that within a few weeks, we should be able to have it and read it, understand the content. After that, then I would comment. But I think the highlights of what is inside there was a kind of a precursor which was provided by the speaker. So I have not had sight of it, and I wouldn't comment further beyond that.
And I'm glad you put your position clearly, and hopefully we'll put you on the spot after you finish reading it,
yes,
to be able to discuss some of the things like the debt.
Absolutely.
Let me come to Professor before I get to Honorable Ojara. When you see the President speak yesterday, and he really emphasized 2 points. One, the foreigners that are getting involved in the business of the country. Two, asking ADF to step out or they will perish. And then he reminded us of the 4 principles of the NRM. Your thoughts about his speech yesterday on security matters and ADF?
Thank you, Timothy. I think the speech was necessary for a person in his position. You know, he's not just a head of state, he's also the head of security in this country. He's the commander-in-chief. So that kind of speech is very reassuring for the public, because you know what happens with the kind of insecurity. When there's insecurity in the place, it creates a kind of fear, it creates a kind of panic. So that kind of speech is meant to reassure the public, to reassure society, that those who are charged with that responsibility are in charge, that they are doing something about it. Thank you.
And your comment on the Attorney General's report, it had 2 elements that I really picked out. One was the 96 trillion in debt. 2 was the 10,000 ghost workers that cost us about 53 billion shillings. Your thoughts on this report that comes out every January of every year?
Thank you, Timothy. I think one thing that is clear is what we have is what was in the newspapers. So like Honorable Omara, I've not seen the detailed report, but at least what was in the papers is alarming. And I think this calls, if it is true, it calls for those who are responsible to actually check. First of all, we applaud the Attorney General that was able to bust and find out if indeed there are 10,000 ghost workers. If that is true, Auditor General, I mean, sorry. So if at all that is true, as reported in the papers, we appreciate the Office of the Auditor General for having been able to establish that. And I know this country has rules and sanctions on how to deal with such issues. So I imagine wherever they have been discovered, heads are going to roll. People are going to be held to account.
We'll get into that detail when, when we get to discuss that report sometime soon. But let me come to Honorable Jara. Your thoughts on the President's speech, timely, especially putting out young ladies there, showing us what the UPDF had done to rescue some ladies there. They gave their testimonies there, but he emphasized the 2 points. Your thoughts, especially on the foreigners there?
Well, first I think it's something that we have to commend the President for. I think the President and the UPDF have done well, have done a commendable job in trying to put the necessary pressure that needed to be put on the ADF. You know what we went through, what had started happening in Kampala and elsewhere. And I think the decision taken by the President and the Army to pursue the ADF inside Congo was something that they needed to do, and have done it rightly. And so it's important that the President keeps the country informed on the progresses being made, but also to continuously give assurance that, you know, despite what happened, the citizens are safe, and they will continue doing what it is required to give every citizen the safety and the security they need. So it's commendable, and we have to continuously encourage the UPDF and their leadership to play their role and do it effectively. Now, on the question of foreigners coming in and all that, I'm sure my brother Mara and the honorable colleague there recall that in 2023, Parliament passed several bills, several laws, including two particular ones. One that looks at computation, how our citizens can have an environment where they are protected. They can compete favorably, but they're protected from people who come in and take away a lot of the opportunities that they've got. So that was a law regarding computation and all that. Yes. And then the other one is on how the citizens can be encouraged to produce things locally and still have the opportunity to have, market and that was in the spirit of making sure that despite having people coming from wherever they would want to come, Ugandans also should have opportunity, opportunities where they are able to do business, they feel safe, they are not deprived or they are not denied such opportunities in their own country. So it's good that the head of state finds a time to emphasize the need to protect the citizens, much as our doors are open everywhere. I think that's a good statement.
Thank you.
But there is something you ask my brother Omara and later on Professor in regards to
the Auditor General's report?
Exactly. I am not surprised that we have this kind of report, because for 2 years I was chairing the Local Government Public Accounts Committee, and I can tell you, for financial year 2021-2022, and also 2022-2023, part of what we discovered in the process of scrutinizing the reports and all that, I'll give you two examples. One, we found a situation where over 600 ghost teachers access payroll, secondary school teachers, 600 in just one financial year. And how do they do it? We found where people would doctor or would get documents, forged documents, including forging minutes of the Education Service Commission. So you find somebody going to the districts with appointment letters and posting instructions that they are sent from the center when they are actually not, and they have never gone through any interviews. So we found over 600 teachers, secondary school teachers. And then there are so many ghost workers, and so you find billions of shillings lost every year, and there is a big problem with payroll management in this country. Payroll management in terms of how people access payroll and how the pensioners are treated. So the question of salary, pension, and gratuity. So there is need. I am happy that currently the Ministry of Public Services is rolling out a new system that is likely to, it's a human capital management system. It's likely to address some of these questions, but it's a big thing. And the other problem that needs to be addressed is where a lot of money is sent to different agencies, whether local government and ministries, and you find at the end of the financial year, several trillions. Like I saw a report.
Honorable Ojara, let me give an opportunity to Chris and Honorable Wilson to comment on this so that we jump into our gist today. Chris, both having been a journalist, when you look at this CISO, both of the Aegis report that has two elements there, but the President's address yesterday that spoke to security, your thoughts and comments on this, and then I'll have Honorable Wilson lastly.
I am not surprised that with the Auditor General's report. This I want to speak from my works as a journalist. I think I am the first journalist in this country to have told this country how money was going through ghost pensioners. I personally did the job, and then it became a big thing. Why the genuine pensioners were dying without receiving what was due to them, and the civil servants were swimming in the money. They would simply create their own pensioners.
So you had living ghosts.
They would pay the ghosts and don't pay the pensioners. People used to collapse at the Ministry of Public Service, chasing pension. Files were lost. Then he tickled until through persistent investigation, through landed that actually they were paying money at a bank nearby here. I had to go and observe So the issue, this is very critical, by the way, even as we go to what belongs to us. Until a country develops a sense of duty, we are bound to see this continue. Not even what Ministry of Public Service is rolling about. Every technology we bring must be accompanied by a value system. Otherwise, it will be broken. When we brought IFMIS in this country, we thought it was a panacea to financial hemorrhage. Far from it. Because we as a country have not had that sense of duty to shepherd what we are supposed to shepherd for the good of everyone.
Okay.
I can tell you, Timothy,
Yes.
you're paying 53 billion, but there are teachers who finished degrees 20 years back, but they are earning as diploma holders. We can't access them the payroll. We can't. They have gone ahead to upgrade. Today we are bringing a policy, all of teachers must have a degree. But we already have teachers with degrees. They can't access the payroll because we say there's no money and we are paying ghosts. Okay. We have Mlago just requiring a bit of human resource to be able to serve us the way we would want. We say there's no money. There are manpower gaps at local government level. Government is running to full capacity. Why? Wage bill. But the wage bill, you see where it is going? And we are not about to say, oh, you know, this can be sorted. We need everyone to appreciate that what is for us all is really good for us all.
Thank you, Chris.
Why I would like to ask the district authorities, the LOC 5 chairpersons elected, the chief administrative officers who pay, the GISOs who work at the districts.
Because the comment, I just wanted a comment.
Yeah,
Let me pick it.
my comment is that this is very dangerous for a country.
Thank you. Honorable Wilson, a comment on the AG's report and the president's speech. You were with him on the 3rd. Your thoughts on his speech for both security and the ADF?
Let me start with the president's speech. The Allied Democratic Force that attacked Uganda in 1996, first attacked Uganda in 1996, and found base in the eastern DRC, a Muslim fundamentalist organization and terrorist group that has meted a lot of untold suffering on Ugandans, that burnt innocent kids of Kichwamba, that has been doing that even came and threw bombs here and killed people, innocent people, has been of recent on the receiving end of Operation Shuja led by our mighty UPDF. However, some Ugandans were beginning to think that ADF did not exist, that maybe the UPDF had gone to Congo for other reasons. So the president brought up very important dimension. First, he had witnesses, those that had been captured by the ADF from Uganda, those that had been lured and captured by the ADF from other countries other than Uganda, those that lived in the camps, those that were set free, those that saw the UPDF hit the camps, those that lived in the camps and were giving testimonies. And so it was important that the president brought that out, but also to say that Operation Shuja had actually achieved one of the major objectives. That is as far as that is concerned. And reassure the nation that all is going to be okay. On the AG's report, the Auditor General constitutionally is an official of Parliament. He does whatever he's doing and reports to Parliament. That report is going to be dissected by the respective committees of Parliament and be brought on the floor. So my thinking is that first, you set systems, but for as long as systems are manned by human beings, you must set counter systems. So it reassures us that after all, there are counter systems that are working.
Thank you very much.
And so the onus is going to be on us now to extract the recommendations and superintend on the implementation of the recommendations and make sure whatever has been discovered should never be seen again.
Okay. Honorable Mara, briefly, so that we can jump into our topic of discussion.
Yeah, just to pick on what Honorable Kajwenga has talked about. President Museveni is basically respected as a regional leader that has championed and executed regional strategic security, not only in DRC, but even in Somalia and other places. But what has happened recently is there is some kind of geopolitics where the newly elected president of DRC actually ordered the regional standby force outside his country. And so the UPDF came back home. I think the Kenyans have gone. So there is that kind of tension which is within the region. So by President Museveni holding that conference, I think he's giving assurance to Uganda and said, come what may, even if we are home, we will defend our national sovereignty and the security of citizens. And I think I wanted to make that particular point. Thank you.
I think I have a simple message about ADF. We can analyze it the way it is. The fact today is, it is foolhardy to attempt to change a government through rebellion. Rebellion is outmoded. So if ADF believes that they will take over the reins of power in Kampala through a fight, then it's a long fight, really a long fight. Unless they turn into a mercenary force, where Kajwenga can go and hire to finish Omara, finish, it becomes a trade. But to take over government through an insurrection in Congo, come here, I really think it's a work in futility.
We pray that is what happens. But let's discuss the impact and the benefits of the 27th Speakers Conference that happened between the 3rd and the 6th of January here. And some of the 5 aims that were there, especially the things the Standing Committee agreed on, was environment, climate change, the role of Parliament, security of parliamentarians, the role of speakers and the presiding officers there. But also we want to look at a bit of what the 26th Speakers Conference really put on the table. The 26th, the one that was before in Australia, on the table it had parliament engagements, security and e-parliament. So we want to look at those and be able to put a yardstick to see where are we, what we measure, can we manage, and that's where we get to. Honorable, give us a bit of highlights of these 72 hours to say that you spent in Munyonyo and what were the outcomes?
Well, first you need to know that this is an opportunity that Uganda used so well. Remember, this kind of conference takes place after every 2 years, and it's on a rotational basis, and there are about 52 countries that are involved in this platform. And so you can imagine how long Uganda will have to wait to have this conference again. So I would like to congratulate the leadership of our parliament, but also the president for supporting this effort. And I can tell you, Parliament of Uganda, from the stories I have had, we interacted with the guests. There are many people who came. I think Parliament of Uganda did the best compared to many other events that probably the participants have participated in. And so we have every reason to celebrate as a country that we did our best. We achieved our goal. And I'm proud of the team that put the pieces together. Members of Parliament, our technical staff, you know, the leadership provided a very firm. But also you can imagine the number of countries that came compared to the previous one, and many countries came. Of course, there are a few that did not come, and it's expected, because even Uganda, sometimes in different forums, would fail to participate because of 1 or 2 reasons. And so generally, the participation was great, the attendance was super, and it ended very well. This is an opportunity where Uganda, you know, showcases the different guests who came, had the opportunity to learn more about our country. had the opportunity to interact with the leadership of our parliament, but also we had the opportunity to build stronger relationship, building partnership, trying to look at how our parliament can, have ties with different parliaments. And so there are lots of things that at the end of the day, our parliament achieved. Of course, I know even those who came had their own motives and they would want to achieve. And I'm sure the countries that participated achieved a lot from this event. So generally, I would say as a part of the people who work day and night to make this event a successful one, I think we achieved the target and we have made this country proud.
But just a follow-up question, what were the biggest take-homes of this conference?
Well, they are, just as you pointed out, there are different thematic areas that our leaders, the speakers, had the opportunity to talk about. Issues to do with climate change, issues to do with parliamentary democracy, issues to do with, there are many subjects. And you see, when such a conference, when such discussions take place, there are positions that are always agreed upon, and every parliament will have to make sure before the next event, before the next conference, they are able to set targets and make sure they implement such decisions. So the most important thing is going to be how the leadership of our parliament and our team will implement some of the decisions that were taken, how much attention we are going to put in terms of, working towards achieving our targets in as far as climate change is concerned. How are we going to enhance our, parliamentary democracy? How are we going to strengthen our level of, the level of involvement and participation? And how do we make citizens a lot more involved in the things we do? And most importantly, this is an opportunity that helps our parliament to reflect deeply and say, look, these are the things and this is how the rest of the parliaments think. How do we improve, continuously? But also, how do we help the other parliament to learn from us? Because not just that we are learning, there are things we have to help the others to learn, and there are things we have to learn from the others. So it's an opportunity where different parliaments come together, the leadership, sharing ideas, learning from one another, but also building a much stronger partnership and, working relationship.
Thank you very much. I'll come back to you about some of the things you've mentioned there. Professor, did this speakers conference meet the present realities, the present pains that Ugandans have? Because when we hear environment, climate change, role of parliament, are these the most pressing that we needed to discuss?
Yes, Timothy. Thank you. I think these were very important. First of all, they just didn't speak about climate change. They talked also about equality. They talked about freedom, independence and dignity. So I think there are quite a number of things. There was the aspect of environment and climate change, diverse and inclusive parliaments. They talked about the security for parliament. I think we've seen these people exercise a few gymnastics in parliament, so I think all of us who go there have to be secure. They talked about the role of speakers and presiding officers. And of course, they were sharing experiences like the previous speaker has spoken. I think for me, they did meet because if you look at something like climate change and environmental change, what is happening on the African continent, including Uganda today, there's a problem with climate change because we have not managed our problem very well. In Africa, we are having things like floods and we are having things like drought, long spells of drought, which then affect production and then affects livelihoods and so many other things. Actually, right now we are beginning to talk about climate-induced migration. Some of the things we saw with the Balalo in northern Uganda is really climate-induced migration because there's not enough pasture and enough water where these people would have been traditionally, but also because rich people have also enclosed the land. So then you find people moving to where they can find. So we have an environmental crisis. Things like Bududa landslides, all of those are the different ways we manage the climate. But also many of the countries that came, countries like Maldives, countries like Mauritius, incidentally many of the Commonwealth countries are small islands in the ocean. A small change in the climate can actually take them. So I think it was timely that they picked climate change as a thing to focus on. The other thing they picked on was the whole aspect of inclusivity and diversity. And the one who amplified this very well was His Excellency when he met them. For example, he talked about how we have 315 constituencies, of which only those are represented by, 14 are represented by females, but how Uganda went beyond that to create room for inclusivity, gender, the youth, the military, the elderly, so there are quite a number of things. But another thing that came out there, because you know one of the things this kind of parliament does, this kind of meeting does, is for the speakers to share their experiences from the context in which they exist. And His Excellency amplified this very well by talking about we can share these things, but we need to respect each other, okay? Because we are beyond imperialism now. Okay, we are beyond colonialism. So there are diversities, there are differences from which people are coming. So it was a call on to self-respect, a call on if freedoms are good for you, they are good for everybody. So and of course there's this much you can get within, was it a 2 days conference or a 3 days conference? So I think for me, in terms of the things that pain us as a country, it was well thematized. The conference gave attention to them: climate change, inclusivity, security, but also the role of speakers, because this conference is largely around the role of speakers as arbiters, because a parliamentary system has adversarial sides. There is opposition, and there's always be a leading. So that's how the parliamentary democracies are organized. So the role of a speaker as an arbiter, of course, we appreciate the role of the speaker has a side, but takes on an arbitration role between these two sides. So this biannual conference is always to remind the speakers of, regardless of their political inclinations, this is their role. And I think for me that's very important every 2 years to remind the speakers of that kind of role. So I think for me that was very important. But also if you look at what the aim of the founding fathers of this conference was, it was really around sharing experiences, it was around promoting parliamentary democracy, it was about sharing, maintaining law and order, maintaining and fostering and encouraging impartiality and fairness. So I think it is still on track in getting these things done.
And just a follow-up question, I'll come back to especially the role of the speakers and get into these details and compare it, put it on a balance with our parliament.
Okay.
There was a budget of 1.8 billion for this conference to happen. Did we get value for money?
The people who were there should be the ones to take it.
Of course, the taxpayer is all of us here.
You see, why I was passing it on, you know, there were quite a number of committees. And you cannot say value for money without knowing what were the cost drivers for that budget. So some of those were open to us, some of those were classified in a way. Because if you're going to host 33 speakers and the presiding officers from 25 countries, you have to secure them, you have to make sure they are comfortable. So there's a lot that goes on which is not public to us. So I cannot clearly say whether we got value for money without knowing what the cost drivers of that budget is.
I can, with your permission.
Yes, please.
I can try to answer his concern.
Yes.
And I will start this way, Timothy. Do you have visitors in your home?
Mm-hmm.
If you do, you don't need to answer me. If you do have, why? Can there be a home without visitors? Is it a home?
And what kind of visitors?
Yeah.
Regardless, is there a home without visitors? What home would that be? And Timothy, if you live here, you go, I'm sure you come from Samialand. If you go home and nobody in your village comes to your home, run away.
You might be a witch.
Run away. It is a testament that the community doesn't feel you. The presence of visitors in a home means community. And any visit, there is a cost.
Exactly.
Do you begin saying, why do you come to my home to drink my water? You host guests according to what's available to you. You do not begin asking, what have I benefited from hosting these people? Do you get the point? If even countries relate that way, more so parliaments relate that way. Parliament has no other peer in Uganda. It has only peers in other countries. And if your peers come to visit you, it is a sign of confidence in you. If you are looking for takeaways, that Honorable Ojara can leave his home to come and eat in your home. You don't even say, but I have to buy meat for him. I have to just consider the visit part of community and stop thinking about the cost. What do you benefit? Honorable Ojara may say, I was at my friend's house. The children may begin interacting better. What do you gain at the end? Harmonious coexistence. But if every visit you say, what will I lose? What will I gain? That is at the, I'm breaking it at that level.
But the other thing, sorry, the other thing that probably Chris would add is you are looking at how much Parliament probably spend. And by the way, you may have a budget of 1.8 and you end up spending less. But look at the opportunities that Parliament created. And you know, right from the planning processes, we made sure we give Uganda an opportunity to tap from this. And we are not just talking on about the 33, you know, speakers and presiding officers. Every country came with so many other guests.
Yeah, the delegates were quite a number.
When you look at a country like Malaysia, they came with a big team of people interested in investing. And they were busy meeting different groups and all that. That is an opportunity created. And again, Parliament made sure that we look at our tourism sector. How do we position ourselves to reap from this? And these guests were taken to, others went to Ginger to look at the source of the Nile, others went to the zoo, others went to national parks. And because, so we are also looking at how much this contributed to this country. So sometimes we will make it appear a little smaller if we don't look at the bigger picture. So I just wanted to
Precisely.
Gentlemen, let me come. I'm coming. Let me come. Let me protect the professor. Professor, one of the things we mentioned, especially on one of your visits to Nigeria, when you got in and then they brought in the material and then they brought the tailors.
Yes.
How have we done to leverage such a conference for the private sector? It's something we mentioned here about NAM, and we called about the stalls being there, so that the ordinary Ugandan has a trickle-down effect of this.
Yeah, thank you, Timothy. I think what we have discussed here before is to say, how can the organizers of that conference bring more people on board in terms of, for example, teaching our people about this, first of all, publicizing the conference, but also publicizing the opportunities that are there in case this conference is to occur. And that's why we talked about, like in Nigeria, even the lowest people come in with tailors, and we said here our people are very good on fruits. Have they been, for example, trained on how to handle fruits in a hygienic way, so that when the big people are in the big conference, the other people that have come with on the delegation are eating a slice of a pineapple, but also seeing, oh, these pineapples are sweet, where do I get them? And I think that's what Honorable Ojara has just said, that the other people were going around and looking for opportunities. So this mainly comes with the organizers of the conference, first and foremost, publicizing the conference, publicizing the opportunities, but also creating organized groups of people that, because you're not going to carry the whole market into this conference and vice versa. But if people are organized in terms of either circles, in terms of groups of either agriculturalists, of animal, whatever, traders, beef producers, crafts, and all that kind of things. So if they're organized like that, then people take advantage. Otherwise, people just see visitors coming from Entebbe, and of course now there's an express, maybe they don't see them, they go to Munyonyo and then they go back. So it is very possible to miss and not to know that this event occurred, except if you're watching TV. So I think it is about us being intentional, but also it's not a way of just counting the cost, but being able to audit and say, what did we benefit? Because if we are intentional about data gathering and counting the opportunities that came out of it, then we actually make these things even more possible. But because we don't collect data, so we just speculate on what the benefits were. Or we can document the big benefits. But indeed, actually, many people do benefit, but we don't have a mechanism of tracking. So
Thank you very
it's very
much.
important that we do track.
Thank you, Professor. Honorable Mara, let me come to you. You and I and a panel have been here to discuss, especially the coups in West Africa, and seeing that Francophone countries getting up to stand up against France. We were handed over this Commonwealth. it is bestowed upon us. At what point do we find African democracy? Is there a place for that?
A very interesting question. Timothy, we are Commonwealth because we have inherited everything from the British government, including the parliamentary systems that we have, and also the common law. I have a lawyer here. He will tell us more about even the laws that we have. Is more or less a British system. And those of the late Julius Nyerere, I think in the early days, and Milton Obote tried something on African socialism. In Uganda here, we had a move to the left. So we were trying to build an inbuilt or homegrown democracy. I don't think it worked. Maybe we didn't do much around it. The late Tom Mboya in Kenya tried also on the African socialism based on our clan system and the tribal settings. It did not take root. So what we are left now is what we know, the parliamentary democracy. And that is why now, this conference was started and we had it here. It is to learn from each other, really. So it's really now what we have. We have attempted, I don't know whether we have a system which is homegrown anywhere in Africa. We need to do some research there. But Timothy, to come to, I think, a number of questions you've been putting to my colleagues, is that what is it that we are, the takeaways? One of the things that was also part of the objectives of the conference is about the speaker's impartiality. Sorry, some water. The speaker's impartiality. If you look at the Commonwealth, you have basically a parliamentary system which has the ruling party and the opposition. Yesterday it was very interesting in the House when one of our colleagues raised the matter of the commissioners and was putting it to the speaker. The speaker said, here I'm impartial, I don't have a party. Government chief whip respond to that matter. So I think as speakers also, it is an opportunity for them really to learn how to, and share experiences. It said in a multi-party democracy, in our countries where you have different set of views and different parties with different aspirations, as a presiding officer or as a speaker, what do you do? I think that is very important because you can't say, I know what I'm doing. It is always a point of learning to allow for a better running of parliament, really. The other one which Professor Sarah has talked about is around promotion of knowledge and understanding of parliamentary democracy. And I want to pick an example. One of the things that the president talked about is ideological differences. The speaker said, out of the 44 speakers invited, 33 attended. The rest did not come on account that the Parliament of Uganda passed an anti-homosexuality law, saying, So now, then the question is, in a democracy, in a parliamentary system, where Parliament is supreme in terms of legislation, if we are members of Commonwealth, then the question would be, what are the matters that we must learn to accommodate? And we don't vilify anybody by looking at a much bigger, more strategic issues around economic development and prosperity of our nations, other than holding somebody down on the account of them upholding their values. So which value is more superior to which one? So I think that, for me, is an opportunity for the speakers to share these ideas and say, if you are from the House of Commons in London and you passed a bill that allow gay and lesbian activities, and you come to Uganda with a law against it, should you stop coexisting or should you coexist? And I think that is now where these meetings become very powerful, where you now said, what are our shared aspirations, what are our differences, and can we respect those differences? And I think for me, that is a very, very important one. The other learning point for me is that parliamentarians are diplomats. There are certain gateways that are open on parliamentary diplomacy. If the speakers meet and in a particular country, the MPs are there, the speakers interact, then if there are obstacles somewhere, the setup of the speakers' conference can be used as an arm of diplomacy in soothing and opening up doors and opening up some bottlenecks and building relationships, really. For me, I think that was a very cardinal thing. When the speaker opened the conference, and I want to salute her for really running these things so well, when she was opening the conference, in her speech, opening speech, she talked about what Professor Saras talked about, is about our identity, how we have accommodated various sets of people, the elderly, the youth, the disabled people, and all manner, the military, they are inside there. It is part of our constitution, but also is contained in our parliamentary rules and procedures. There are a lot of things which are there. So now that is how we have learned to manage our democracy. If those shared aspirations, how we do things here, in terms of what is in our constitution, our parliamentary system, the rules of procedures of parliament, I think the harmonization between parliaments is actually very key. Other countries do theirs differently. Others don't say, we don't want the military here. Then we can explain from our history why we have the military in parliament. So that kind of conversation in terms of sharing legislative activities and sharing our rules and procedures, that becomes very cardinal to parliament. And I've tried to concentrate around matters parliament, because what is it that we have learned? What has brought us together? The gathering. What is it that we can filter and rally around it and becomes useful for us? One of the things that I saw was our deputy speaker playing golf with one of the speakers, one I think from Singapore, then the one from Tonga. And they were at Serena Kigo playing golf. And the deputy speaker said, those two speakers said, no, this country is so beautiful, it's so wonderful, I am coming back. I'm coming back with my family, and we want to do tourism. So I think one of the takeaways which we could talk about is that the visitors were able to enjoy not only the beautiful country that we have, the beautiful weather, but Uganda's hospitality and food. And so many of them will return, not alone, but with their families, with their friends. And that also, as I've mentioned already, around parliamentary diplomacy, it will be also a gateway to bring in more people into the country in terms of benefiting from the tourism that we have, and also bringing in capital into the country. So I see this as an opportunity for these people to learn more about us as a country. And maybe the other thing which the speaker talked about, and the leader, the former LOP, congratulated the speaker for doing, is to mention it very clearly about the separation of powers. So government is in three parts: the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. Then the question is, where is the nexus that bring all of us together? I remember, I think it must have been either 9th Parliament or 10th, I don't know which one, where there was so much friction between the executive and the legislature. And the president was saying, I think you guys have pushed me too much. I might have to dissolve parliament then. we all go back and get re-elected, because now I might need new people. So in terms of the separation of powers, what is our understanding of that? Is it absolute? Or there is some nexus where there is how do I call it, some healthy friction, but which is good for the country and good for democracy. So that understanding needs to permeate in the minds of members of parliament and also the speakers, so that even as they preside over the House, they have an understanding of what separation of powers mean and to what extent that can be played. Thank you, Timothy.
Honorable Wilson, a comment before I get to Chris there.
First, I think it's important that I contextualize this. This was the 27th conference. It was started in 1969 by the then head of the
Canadian Parliament.
The Canadian Senate, actually, I think Honorable Lucien Moreau, something like that. It's a French name. And I agree, yes, because Canada was also colonized by the British. So out of the falling empires, something good can come out. There is that we share as former colonies of the British, and that is the language. And the president, while opening, highlighted it. We must use it for our own benefit, because there is that. And I'm happy that you highlighted the benefits, the objectives of that 27th conference held in Uganda. We achieved that. But most importantly, the take-homes. And you mentioned how much we spent and what we benefited. Let me again put this in context.
Honorable
to put
Wilson,
an advert
of where you talked about the colonies.
Yes.
The example I gave Honorable Mara, because we were here, we discussed the coups in West Africa and the Francophone countries.
Yes.
Where is the place that colonies end and African democracy has a place? Is
Absolutely.
there a place for that?
You saw the president highlight that former colonies today must be given their right to decide. They are sovereign states. If the Parliament of the Republic of Uganda, with the bipartisan support that cuts across, decides that we do not want homosexuality, no other force outside or anywhere, east or west, should try to impose their beliefs, their morals, or their thinking. And for me, that was clear. And for the Commonwealth, should agree. If it is Tonga, if it is Uganda, for as long as the parliament of that sovereign state decide that this is what they want, they should be left on their own. But let me come back. I was going to contextualize the cost implication vis-a-vis the take-home. To put an advert on BBC or CGTN or UBC, for that case, prime time costs you millions of dollars. But from the 1st to the 8th of the month, all world major cables were reporting about Uganda. Why? Because their principals, heads of legislative bodies, speakers, and presiding officers were here. And so that, I want you to know, Uganda did not pay any, but by hosting. And that has a trickle-down theory.
Yes.
You saw speakers enjoy our culture dances at Ndere True. You saw visiting speakers tee off the greens at Kigo. You saw speakers visit the source of the Nile. I can tell you, these are memories that are etched into their minds, and I can tell you they are going to come back. That with the context, they are going to come back as tourists, and money comes in. So we managed to sell the beautiful part of Africa to the rest of the world by mere hosting a successful conference. That is beneficial to us.
Honorable, I'm going to come back to you about that. And Professor, let me allow Chris.
Ask your question.
I'm going to come back to you. Let me get to Chris. Chris, this seems like an opportunity But also, on the other side, looks like an opportunity for good photos, nice food eaten.
I needed
a very good aura of PR, you being a journalist. Also seeing the PR that came out before this conference that really tainted the image. Have we really got value out of this conference?
I would prefer Honorable Wilson complete his thought process.
Absolutely.
Then I answer all these questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me say this, interestingly.
Then I can drop in my question.
Yes, please do.
Some of the delegates had concerns. There were no booklets in the hotels. There was no material to read about the country.
Yes.
There was no different physical features in this country. There was
Physical?
nothing. Mountains, Renzori, what places to visit. There was no material on national parks. There was no material on where to go if you're to spend money of $1. There was no anywhere to speak about to have an experience of Uganda. So, did we market this country enough?
Well, that's another concept. I agree. If we did not, then we learn from that, and we make sure starting next week we do even better. But I have a feeling that the weather, the aura, the greens, the food, the fruits, the ambience of being in the Power of Africa must have captured them. Having said that, let me say, and my colleague mentioned about it. You see, diplomacy is not cheap. And all countries, and from Asian to Greek. Now, this is what we call parliamentary and or legislative diplomacy. This is what the Right Honorable Anita Among and Right Honorable Thomas Tayebwa achieved for the 4 days of that. You have no idea that 33 heads of legislative bodies meeting together and exchanging, that for them, most of them, it was their first opportunity. And certainly it marked a beginning of a relationship. And for Uganda to have brought them together, it is great. And I can tell you, next time there is something to benchmark on, next time there is something to learn from, next time there is a phone call that is needed, next time there is an arrangement that is needed, next time a business investment or trade opportunity needs to be arranged between the Speaker of the Republic of Uganda and the businessman or Speaker of any other country that visited, it becomes seamless and no problem. That should not be taken lightly.
Thank you very much. Over to Chris.
You see, Timothy, I know the mindset of our people when they say, what have we benefited from it? I think it is important for us, the media, to be able to give better information and better context. I'm happy the professor and the panelists here have taken the debate to that level. That's why I was enjoying that at least I will not lose a job because the deliberations have really done my work. If you want us to bring down, you are going to tell us, indirect troop, you go and ask indirect troop, did they benefit? Because I can't know. But you saw them there. We don't go to indirect troop as a gift. We spend money. You saw the dancers you saw, they came from Acholi.
From Agago.
Agago. You go and ask them. It doesn't mean every conference must put money in the pocket of everybody. That's not what we should be selling to the population. That there is a conference, now all of a sudden, whoever doesn't have money in their pocket is going to have. We will not be helping the country. The deputy speaker, apart from golfing, he took speakers to quality chemicals. And they said, wow, there is this? Do you know how many deals they will make to have those drugs taken into their countries? Who will benefit? It is our country. Purely that, Timothy. You saw people going to Wildlife Authority, awed by what we have. And you've said, you have not shown them the gorillas. When you go to UWEC, you see all of Uganda. All of it. It is a representation of what is in Uganda, in tourism. You must admit that the delegates were there. There would have been no time to take one of them to Machiso, Nwea, again meetings. But UWEC has a representation of Kidepo, of Machiso, of everything there. They were taken. So when we talk about what have we benefited, is it in terms of putting money in everyone's pocket? There are certainly benefits. There are those which are material benefits. There are those you call short, long term. I will tell you as a Ugandan, this was a parliamentary function. But I come from a school of thought that parliament is, because there is a country called Uganda. Even when they say we independence, this is in as far as execution of their duties is concerned, let parliament be independent. But parliament is part and parcel of Uganda and must address Ugandan problems together with other arms of government, the executive, the judiciary. So the independence is to the extent that when you're analyzing the budget, let nobody come. But you should analyze the budget in the context of what the country wants. You call it minimum consensus. The points of agreement. We must have that. And as Ugandans, we must reach a point of best attitude towards our issues, towards our governments, towards our problems. What I'm seeing, we are at the negative. And we do not expect, there is something we call rational ignorance. Even the elite are totally ignorant rationally. They know the problem, but somehow they think someone else will come and solve it. That when you cry louder to the white man, tomorrow Uganda will be okay. That's rational ignorance. It's about us. You know very well that this conference comes at the backdrop of serious travel advisories against this country. Be careful with Uganda. There's a death there. And then you host 33 speakers. And they have enjoyed, they have danced, they have gone back. What benefit would you ask us at the lecture?
And
that level?
No single incident.
No incident. In a country there where they are publicizing all over the world, oh, Uganda is a death for homosexual, they are killing, they are dying every day. And the same Ugandans are giving interviews in the world capitals that there we can't survive. I don't know where they have ever killed a homosexual. You'll tell me one. So then people will say, we are going to Uganda. Amidst the campaign against it. That's why you must, I was very happy when they were thanking their boss, their colleague, but they chose her to be their leader. I was very happy when they said she did a good job. She spent sleepless nights to ensure this conference is there.
Absolutely.
There were powerful forces saying, don't go there. She didn't do it for her. She didn't do it for Parliament. The speaker did it for Uganda.
For the nation.
That's what, when they are talking about Uganda, it's about Uganda. It's no longer about Speaker Anita Mo. So these are the benefits we, the intellectuals, must be telling the people. But somehow we choose to think when we water down everything, we are achieving it. So there are too many benefits of hosting this. But I started by being so basic that why would you have guests at your home? That's what I started from. And is there a home without visitors? Do you analyze the benefit of visitors? There is a lot. The mere fact that people have visited you is good enough. You feel, wow, I belong. Uganda belongs to a community of countries. And the community of countries believes in Uganda. How do you know? They came. They were in Munyonyo. Before you begin looking about, there was no writing pad, there was no, but they came. And by the way, I also spoke some of them. In this conference, I decided to be very far to watch because I have staff. I wanted to see where will things go wrong. Sometimes when you're a commander and you're in the front line, you may not analyze the war properly. I was passing around Honorable Rita Tukwasa, Mbarara municipality. She called me, she was a Katasa MP for Maldives. Contrary to what you say, they didn't know where to spend money. I was telling him immediately, I went there, I began selling Uganda, you know, here, there is Machison, Honorable Rita, take him to Machison Falls. The man said, but I want to see Kampala at night. So what are you going to do? So there was no consensus on what guests want.
Maybe then we should have had the list of the discotheques.
And that is why there was a Katasa MP. That's why there was a Katasa MP.
For every delegate.
And every delegate has a Katasa MP. Whatever the delegate wanted was offered. If the delegate wanted to go to Machison, they went. If they wanted to sing Kampala at night, they saw. So it was a perfectly organized event here in Kampala. So the benefits are enormous. But, and I said it somewhere, let us learn to be happy for what happens in Uganda, the good that happens. Do you know what it means for Canada, Britain, where to say, Australia, don't go to Uganda, and calling speakers, don't go to Uganda, and the speakers say, for us we will go.
And they did.
And they did come. That is a very big advantage.
I also know on very reliable information that the Right Honourable Speaker Anita Among will be in the UK speaking in their parliament in March this year. But what resolutions came out of this conference and how are they going to trickle down?
The resolutions that I will ask Honourable Mapenduzi. He was the one there. This was a meeting of speakers, and I think you have talked about it. It's not even on your sources. The speaker said it openly in Munyonyo, that they have invited me to House of Commons. So you don't even need to say your sources. It is public because he said it. Why? And they want to hear from her. And she's not shy to go and tell them this is the position of Uganda. And Honorable Omara has ably elaborated this issue. Most of the concepts we regurgitate here intellectually, they come from these very people. Unity in diversity. What does it mean?
But actually, for me, just to add on to that briefly, there's a question you asked about the Francophone countries. So is this an opportunity? I think for us, this was an opportunity. First of all, it's not, Uganda hasn't registered the lowest turn up. The 26th CS POC had 23. Yes. So ours has 33. Before us, Canada had 47. So it doesn't register very big numbers out of the 140 something. They are normally small numbers. But I think for me what this is important, given the dimensions of why people are being called. So in spite of the calls, people turn up. Of course, the big countries didn't turn up. The Commonwealth realms, the countries on which the Queen is head of state, Jamaica, they didn't turn up. But the others stand up. And for me, what is the opportunity here? It is to say that even when we are within the Commonwealth, those of us who think like this have this strategic agenda. Because in the new world, in the globalized world today, you cannot afford to collaborate. But you're collaborating out of these things. So it is in a way sending a statement. The Francophone countries are doing direct coups. So this was a coup without being a coup. And which can be leveraged, it can be leveraged for different things in future. To say that within this family of 140 something, there is this block of us who think like this and are going to move like this in terms of trade, in terms of this, but also in terms of values and in terms of ideology.
Professor Sara, you remember that Rwanda moved away from Francophone and joined the Commonwealth.
Yes.
And also NAM has invited those West African coup leaders. Yes, they said, you come, you are accommodated here. Yes. Before you realize it, those even ECOWAS, that is maligning these people, will actually find that there's little that they can do.
Yeah.
So it is quite an interesting thing. You find that Francophone West African states, Timothy, they might become Commonwealth.
Okay. And we must be proud, Timothy, that CISPOC ended successfully. Absolutely. It is opened the way for NAM. Let's be thinking about NAM. Because they are coming to our country. With the CISPOC registering success, our constant should be NAM and G77 registering success. Because you can see from the discussions here, the benefits are enormous. Okay. The benefits that do not mean money coming to you directly.
Let's hear from Honorable Jara before I read some of the feedback here.
There's something you mentioned. You talk about certain things not being in place. I think you need to understand how we plan this. We deliberately decided that instead of having, and by the way, part of the decision was that we should use less paper. Because we are talking about climate change, we are talking about the environment. And you want to destroy so much, it will not be reasonable. So we said, instead of having so much documentation, let's go digital. There were a lot of information online, and they were guided on how to access this information. But apart from that, we made sure every delegate at the member of parliament attached to him or her called the courtesy MP. And these courtesy MPs did a commendable job. They did much more than what you would read on paper, because they are there every time, responding to you, marketing the country, and they did their job well. And the feedback we have got, they did a fantastic job. So so it shouldn't be that we did not provide those things. It's about how you plan, how did you achieve it. We still did what we could have achieved if we had put the papers you're talking about. So I just wanted to clarify.
But we have the, we had the entire IT
Let me read some of the
there.
feedback coming through here. Thank you, Timothy, for the program. Thank the MPs and Professor for their constructive resolutions there. The Speakers Conference has made a number of constructive resolutions, but one big challenge is Uganda is implementing. My fear is that a few resolutions may be enforced, but in some few weeks, and the rest will be left before positive results are recorded. This is Ronnie from Gulu. Thank you very much, Ronnie. Someone else comes in and says, how are we preparing to receive the heads of state and other delegates who are coming to Uganda, Kampala, with all these potholes in the city roads? Upcountry roads are much better than Kampala city roads, where the visitors going to pass. Okay? Engineer Wako comes and says, I'm watching from Nairobi, Happy New Year. Please send my regards to the panelists, and I'm enjoying what they're saying there, especially Honorable Mpenduzi. Looking forward to seeing him soon, okay? Lastly but not least, good evening, Timothy and the panelists. The Auditor General Office's report is being credited and well done, at least at locating the ghost workers. I hope some of these monies will be received from the ghosts and will be recovered, and the culprits will be brought to book. Otherwise, a report without practical solutions as recommendations intends to support our economy will be lame, a lame one. This is Nimrod, and thank you very much, Nimrod. Finally, good evening to the entire panel and Timothy there. The Auditor General's report about the ghost workers, it shows that the kind of country we are in. They are well-qualified workers, for example, teachers that are jobless, yet they are ghost workers. Who is in this country to change it, and who will take charge of our country? Thank you very much for the messages. Keep them coming. We'll read the last segment of the messages towards the end of the show. But for now, before I have a coup, let's take a break.
It's super fast internet. Oh, it's a super camera. It's a super battery.
Phone battery full.
Yeah, it's a super deal. Get the Kabode Super from MTN now at a reduced initial deposit of only 49,000 shillings and pay the balance in Pola for as low as 833 shillings per day. Grab this Super Kabode deal and get 2 GB of free MTN data every month for 8 months. Get the Kabode Super now from any MTN shop countrywide. Everywhere you go, MTN. Regulated by UCC.
Metu Bus Industries, Namamve, the manufacturers of buses for transporters, schools, tour operators, and special purpose vans and any customized vehicle. Metu Bus Industries offers a range of buses known for safety, comfort, and reliability. Depending on your needs, a bus can simply be a point A to point B people mover with just seats, or a special design that includes power outlet, Wi-Fi, television, refreshment center, and any other specification. Buy your buses from Metu and support industrialization of Uganda. Contact us on 0788 118586 or 0782 030303. Email us metuafricabus@gmail.com. Visit our website www.metubusafrica.com.
Economic focus. In response to the era of economic globalization, the non-aligned movement has expanded its focus beyond political ideals to advocate for a more equitable international economic order. The movement recognizes the need for economic cooperation and development initiatives that benefit all member states, particularly those in the developing world.
Ricky Rapper co-founded SafeBorder to make day-to-day commuting safer for everyone. He and his team have added a professional touch to an informal sector with the help of technology. From humble beginnings to the Forbes Africa 30 Under 30 list, Ricky brings a unique perspective to the boda business since he too started out as a rider. With SafeBorder scaling its operations, we know that this is just the beginning. Ricky, keep moving. You are unstoppable. MTN, the Unstoppable Network, celebrates you. Download the SafeBorder app and together, let's support Ugandans like Ricky who are driving our country's unstoppable progress.
Welcome back from that quick commercial break here behind the headlines. My name is Timothy Nyangweso. Even as we get to this last leg of the show, I'm still with my formidable panel here. I'm joined by Professor Sarah Sali, Honorable Ojara Mapenduzi, Honorable Mara Paul, Chris Obore, and Honorable Wilson Kajreje. And we're looking at the impact, the benefits, short-term, medium, and long-term of the 27th Speakers Conference. Did it benefit us as Uganda? And a lot of benefit has come through it. A lot has been said, and resolutions and feedback are still coming through. Go to our X handle, drop your comment there, hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines, or text us on 0709 60 25 92 and let us know what you think. Let's get into this conversation, especially on the arm of Parliament. And Honorable Wilson, I'll start with you. When you look at this Speakers Conference, let's get back home.
Yes.
The 11th Parliament, all the way to all the parliaments that have been there. Will there be legislative improvement?
Yes.
And how will it happen?
Thank you. First of all, let's appreciate that this is the first conference of its magnitude that has been hosted and successfully organized and arranged by the current leadership of the 11th Parliament. Right Honorable Anita Mong and her deputy, the Right Honorable Thomas Taiwa. They have done an excellent job in planning and execution of the plans up to the end. Seamless, incidentless. There was nothing. Now that's one. Two, I can tell you, you had almost all members of Parliament involved in protocol, in being available to the visiting speakers and presiding officers and their delegations. What you talked about, there was probably no need to ask to read about Rwenzori when there was an MP who could tell you what Rwenzori is all about. 5,100 meters above sea level, snow-capped on the equator, in the western part of all that. So it gave opportunity and confidence, one, to the presiding officers and speakers of the 11th Parliament. It gave opportunity immense to the honorable members of Parliament who got involved in organization, in planning, at committee level, in protocol, in execution, in escorting and being available for these visiting delegations. But also, when you look at the thematic areas, I can tell you, Uganda has put on the table matters that are of concern to the whole world today. Climate change. That means whatever else is going to be legislated on, there has to be some form of mainstreaming on the theme of climate change. In whatever aspect you are coming with, whatever legislation, whatever planned budget or what, matters of climate change. And that is not only for Uganda, but for us, we already see the benefits. And I'm happy to add that as a member of Parliament for Nyabushozi constituency, I have personally initiated the Greening Nyabushozi campaign, where we are planting trees, we are restoring the green canopy, and we are cleaning the Kavela and all that.
And,
so
and
I was still
I'm really grateful for that area, but let's get to Parliament where you three are.
Okay.
What does this conference add to you in terms of the quality of debate, in terms of the improvement in legislation and having laws that work for the country?
Okay, so first, from the thematic areas, the objectives of this 27th conference, as you saw, we're going to have to focus our minds on what affects the world, because it affects us as well. We are going to have to respect each other, because that was the theme of the 27th conference. For the 2 years that we are steering that, we're going to have, you are going to view the member of parliament on the other either as not an enemy, but just an opponent. In that, you're going to listen to the other ideas in matters of human rights, in matters of debate of issues that cuts across. It's going to improve our stature, our standing, our understanding of parliamentary work, our you can call it diplomatic status also. Basically, that's the issue. That's how the conference, hosting this conference. And as we reflect, when we want to benchmark, for example, because we do a lot, when we are part of the legislative processes, that the executive comes up with a bill, it goes to the Committee of Parliament, and the Committee of Parliament wants to benchmark where else it has worked or to improve on what so it's going to be so busy, and it will be so easy for us as members of the 11th Parliament if we have to go to Zambia, to the Maldives, because we have interacted with them. And it's going to be so easy again for those receiving houses or commons or parliaments to also accept Uganda's delegations and facilitate their work because we have done it here. So it's reciprocal diplomatic practice.
Let's dig our feet in a little bit. The presiding officer of Parliament, the 11th Parliament, is from the NRM.
Yes, both actually.
Both of them.
Yes.
Some of the issues go to the caucus. What have you picked from the experiences from the other presiding officers and speakers, especially balancing national issues vis-a-vis party issues?
Yes. Even when we have a caucus, by the way, we have had to come up and say this cuts across. I can tell you, and I have not seen the NRM caucus where I am a proud member. It has not curtailed the level of debate of the 11th Parliament. They come up to say, as NRM, this is our position. Nevertheless, members of Parliament have that sufficient leg room to debate, to think, to legislate for the whole country. But I must also add that the NRM is a party for the whole country. It also has majority, does not only have majority members of Parliament, it also has the best policies and ideas for the country. So there is no contradiction.
So there are no alternatives?
There are no. There probably are, but it's also a party that listens to alternatives. If you come up with a better alternative, it's a party that listens.
I will pick up that conversation and dig in a little bit. But Chris, let me come to you. Especially having these presiding officers and the speakers present and putting our parliament against theirs, is the parliament in Uganda independent?
I think the framing of the questions somehow amazed me, but they are valid. The independent from what? You know, I'm very good at interrogating these conceptual issues. Independent from what?
Independent from the other arms of government, independent in its decision making, independent in holding government accountable, sticking to the principles.
It is independent and not independent, and that's how it's supposed to be. I answered that question. In as far as Honorable Omara is concerned, in executing his work as a committee chair, the executive will not come and say, today let's so attend. No, he's independent. But what he's doing is to facilitate the executive. He's not doing it to end with him. That's how it works. Honorable Mapendus has written reports to who? As far as his work to compile a report is concerned, give him the independence. But the report must aim at addressing national issues, which is also the concern of the executive. So it is more to do with collaboration than competition. But we have been made to use these terms to sound like there are some, I don't know what kind of things they are.
Like we are at war.
At war. Okay. We want, let me explain.
Chris, let's bring it closer. The Kenyan issue. The President Ruto has come out to point at the judiciary. The Chief Justice has also come out to comment. We have also had, you know, arrests of members of parliament. We have had them get into parliament. What we're asking, is it independent?
That is what I'm addressing.
We're not asking about the lack of collaboration, the lack of cohesion, the nexus that Honorable Mara was talking about. Can it do its duties independently without the influence of the executive and the judiciary?
But how does the judiciary also influence parliament? Not at all. And actually what you are seeing in Kenya is an outcome of lack of collaboration. And we don't want Uganda to go that route. If we don't go that route, then we are performing better. I am telling you, independence of parliament, independent from what? As I told you, it is independent and also dependent. For Honorable Ojara to do his work, the executive must give him money. If he's independent, let him go and sell his cows and come and do parliament work. You get what I'm saying? They are relating. It is in the performance of duties that you say, give professor the independence to imagine, to think, to create, so that you get more value from her. That's how I understand independence in this context. But not that she's doing things her way. She runs a department of gender of Makerere University. So what she does at that department, in processing, please use your knowledge, but to feed into the overall vision of
the university.
So parliament, judiciary, executive must all work in their so-called independence to achieve this vision. So they are interdependent. And I've told you, parliament appropriates, they do what, but at the end of the day, the law gives them a degree to appropriate. They must collaborate with the executive. What we see people advocating in Uganda is a deadlock of democracy, where you want to see people at war. That's not being independent. Confrontation is not independence. But you differ. You can differ with the executive. And many times parliament has differed with the executive without going to war. That happens in Uganda. But the point I was trying to make all along here is that we need to put clarity to how we address issues. I'm happy we are debating with the professor here. I think they also know what I mean, clarifying issues. Because certain things seem similar, but there is a difference. When you talk about gender, why should there women be there? There are things unique to a woman that only a woman can talk about. However much Obore loves women, it is only women who know, because they are women. Unique to them. That's what they call diversity. And that's what they call inclusiveness. Here, all of them. Parliament does that. But when you say legislative improvement, Timothy, first of all, this conference is not for MPs. It's for speakers. And I must tell you, Uganda has an example of a speaker who came from no experience to stardom, even just running the house alone. She was a deputy for how many months?
Yeah, a few months. Yeah.
He's a speaker, but you can see the trend.
Absolutely.
I think Professor is clapping for a woman.
Yeah.
Which was a male domain. And she fell into the shoes of those who were more experienced in our context. And everyone wrote her off. Ask lawyers today whether they can write Anita off. So this interaction enriches her. We can only wait and see. But the conference closed yesterday. And today you are saying, how has it improved?
That's why I was giving an example of yesterday. Two things happened there. When I think Honorable Arion was quarreling because of commissioners. The speaker said, I'm neutral here. If you have problems, you ask government chief whip. And government chief whip said, from my party, this is the position. Everybody has been considered. It's from my party. So the speaker said, my work here is to decide the nominees and to pronounce whether Parliament approves it or not. So I think she's beginning to exercise that particular...
The knowledge gained there.
Yeah.
So, and when you talk about improvement of Parliament, don't target it to a conference.
Can I give simple, the concept of independent...
Parliament holds the executive accountable and the judiciary. So, when we talk about the improvement in legislation, improvement is a very big term. There are very many variables that improve legislation, other than just a CISPO committee. This one we can see has improved the arbitration, because it was about the arbitrators, the speakers. Now, the improvement of our legislature is not something a meeting can resolve. What would you want Speaker O'Mara to do when you have elected a lumpen? What do you want him to do? The improvement of our legislature is a factor of so many things. And remember, the Speaker does not appoint MPs. The Speaker is a colleague of MPs, a leader among leaders. The people who recruit MPs are not the speakers. The people who identify the qualities on an MP is not the Speaker. So if you are talking about improvement, you have a big role to play to those who recruit MPs. If they recruit an Ojara, thank God. If they recruit the one who dances with them, legislation is not dancing. If they recruit a fighter, legislation is not fighting. So this is what I talk about. Improvement is a different one. But in terms of positioning the Speaker, this has been a very perfect conference. And the Speaker is a fast learner. This was, if you wanted to get the worst part of Anita Among, you seem to have just done anything that tries to affect the running of that conference. You would see a different Anita Among. I am part of the recipients. Where are you? I'm in Bukedia. Is Parliament in Bukedia? Forever stay there if you can't turn up here. My friend, that is, you know, the speed from Bukedia to Kampala. That shows you the passion of a leader to her responsibility. So how much more do you think she has learned?
I'm sure you had gone to celebrate Christmas.
No, let me stick with the I was actually at a function where she told me to go. And Honorable but that became immaterial.
You mentioned the influence of one over the other.
Yeah.
But we also see indecision from one to the other. Well, one has made a decision, waiting for implementation from the other. Can Parliament stand up to the executive?
I can tell you, before even you put them in that, Parliament has stood to the executive. If standing to the executive means telling the executive, this is wrong, this is what we think should be done, Parliament has stood. But if standing means you confront the executive, that is a different method of standing. I'm talking about the
implementation of a decision made by Parliament and the executive hasn't implemented.
No, I don't think that's the correct assessment.
Absolutely.
That's not the correct assessment. The executive has implemented 80 to 90% of decisions of Parliament.
And you're not monitoring the visit.
Yes, the only area where you see where political interest clash. And the executive must also, because every decision in Parliament tells the executive to implement, has two costs that are very important for anybody. The financial cost and the political costs. You can't run if you understand politics. And policy implementation, there is a reason why it is a preserve of the executive. And the executive is the one that runs the civil service, appoints the civil service to run these activities. Parliament can decide this. What if the bureaucracy presents other evidence to say this action can delay? Because implementation as we speak is not a panacea to our problems. Every policy option, Professor is here, is an assumption that it will address a problem.
Yeah.
And even if you implement, it can create other problems. That's why policy process is a cyclic one. But here we think policy is about magic bullets. Parliament has decided on a magic bullet. Do this and things will happen. No. So Parliament has to be listening to the executive. The executive has to be listening to Parliament. That is the debate I want us to have. How do we make our politicians disagree without being disagreeable? Then we shall have positive policy implementation and outputs. For now, we are made to think creating a deadlock of democracy is what makes Parliament a working Parliament.
Okay.
Not at all.
Honorable Wilson, let me get Honorable Wilson, then come back here to Honorable Jara.
Okay. In fact, a deadlock between executive and Parliament is a failure of democracy. Is a failure for the leaders to agree. It should never be entertained. I don't know why we think so super adversarial that we want to see executive and legislature at war with each other. That's not the best. That actually means that the leaders of both are not...
Let me put it clear as it continues. Timothy, where you see that fight, the fight is not about interests of the country. They are personal in nature. Because that which is public,
so let me,
what would make you too personal on a matter that a road has not been done, then you go and fight the professor. So unless you think in doing the road, you'd have got the money. Okay. But if it's about policy, you have to understand why professor has delayed to do the what? The road.
Thank you. Okay. So has Parliament stood up to the executive? The answer is on a daily basis in executing their constitutional mandate. And yes, every time executive brings in a law, Parliament amends it, and the executive accepts. Isn't that standing up against them in the best? Why? Because Parliament is constituted by people's representatives. They say this is what we think is the best for our people. Parliament executive comes with the draft proposals for budget, and executive does that, and Parliament gets it and turns it around and say we think money should go here, here, and here. That's the best because that's what people think. So yes, in exercise of their constitutional mandates, they actually execute that. One would never try to entertain a situation where there is a deadlock. That means a failure of leadership and politics on all sides. Never entertain it.
Honorable Jara, before I get to Honorable Mara.
I want to pursue the question you gave to the angle you wanted it to be. You wanted to find out, and you were going towards giving the example of where some ministers are recommended, or Parliament takes a decision that, because of ABCD.
Let's even add agencies.
Well, I want to go the direction you were taking us.
Okay.
Because that is what you wanted us to say. So you are talking about where Parliament recommended that some ministers should be relieved of their responsibilities. You see, we shouldn't encourage Parliament to go beyond its mandate. There are limits. I chair a committee on public service and local government. My work and the committee is to do what Parliament assigns to the committee, and we report back to Parliament. Parliament will take from that point. There will be a debate. There will be recommendations, and Parliament will pass resolutions. The moment that is done, those resolutions have to be taken over by the executive and implemented. There are mechanisms in our rules where the executive is given clear time frames on when to report back. Now, again, when you look at a minister being censured, The moment Parliament has finished its part, there is a part the executive has to come in. For example, the president, as the appointing authority, has to exercise his powers. Now, Parliament is not going to step beyond its boundary to say, President, do this, because you have already given your recommendations. So Parliament has to allow the president to exercise his powers without interfering. Maybe the next step is when Parliament will say, for how long do we, or how much time do we give for the president to exercise his powers? If we want to put that, we have to come back to the law. What does the law say? Do we amend the law? Do we? So these are things, and so whatever Parliament is doing right now is to make sure we operate within our limits. We don't go beyond what the law requires of the Parliament. And sometimes we are easily mistaken, okay? And there are very clear ways that, and I've seen this, when we come with reports and their recommendations and their resolutions, there are ways that Parliament would hold every ministry or someone who should implement those resolutions accountable. For example, there is a particular period you are supposed to come back and report on what actions you have taken. Even when there are resolutions in Parliament, I have seen on our order paper, every time the presiding officer putting every entity to come back with responses showing what action they have taken based on ABC recommendation. So there are ways that we have to follow, and it has to be like that. But the moment we want to create an impression that it has to be confrontational, we then begin to operate outside the rule. So we have to stick to that, and that helps to make Parliament more effective.
Thank you very much. Honorable Mara, we have been here and discussed numbers of Parliament. But let's take it a notch higher. Does Parliament need to bite a little bit more? Because the recommendations from committees, the decisions that have been made, but also the decisions that are awaiting the President to make them. What needs to be done for Parliament to bite a little bit more, especially with help from its presiding officer?
I don't understand well when you said bite more.
They will choke.
Let's have certain things.
Let's give examples.
Yes.
You look at, we have been here and discussed the numbers, how people just have 3 minutes to be able to speak.
Yeah.
Is that really representation of the people that you're coming in Parliament to do, to be able to be there? Should we have 2 houses? Should we have quarters in this from the different districts there?
Yeah.
But also, the Attorney General's report, alluding to it, ghost workers and all these things. What more needs to be beaten?
So let us look at the interplay between the 3 arms of government. One is that the roles and responsibilities of Parliament, of executive, and legislature has been established by law. So the law prescribes how far each one of them can go and what they need to do. One of the core role that nobody will take away from Parliament are these 2 powers. Powers of legislation. Nobody, no organ of government can really make laws in Uganda. It's only a preserve of Parliament. Now, so that is why we said separation of powers. Those ones, the president cannot make a law. I have seen President Museveni, whatever he does, he works within the ambits of the law. And Parliament makes it. And that interplay, it goes to him for endorsement. The second one is the powers of appropriation. Now, of really, you know, we have a limited resource envelope to distribute the money. Appropriation basically means distributing the limited resources. It's only Parliament that does that. What the executive does is our proposals. But the final appropriation is done by Parliament. Maybe what you're referring to in terms of our numbers, one of the things that the country is considering now, I think from the executive in Parliament, is a constitutional amendment bill. And yesterday when the Speaker told the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, said, we have been waiting for you, please can you put in place the Constitutional Review Commission to basically look at our Constitution broadly and look at some of these things and say, where is it that we need to have amendments for the good of the country? Because after a period of time, since the NRM came to power, this is now going to be 40 years. What is it that has worked well? What is it that has not worked well? And that can now be strengthened within the constitutional amendment so that we can have something that works for the country. One of the things you've talked about is, I think, within the which is in the Constitution, is about constituencies, by the way, a formula of how we can increase constituencies. What we have done is more or less around political expediency, other than working with an agreed rule to say you can only create a constituency when, for example, A, B, D, C, D are considered. Population growth and whatever would determine number of constituencies. So personally, I am of a very strong view that we have a much bigger parliament. That's my personal opinion. We can have a much smaller parliament so that there is a robust conversation over a particular matter. Because if I stand for 2 minutes and it's all over, then my how do I call it, responsibility and roles of representation is curtailed. So maybe we need to look back. And there have been justifications. We've debated this matter, justifications for creating these constituencies. As I mentioned before, you could find that there are, if I disagree with Honorable Kajwenge, and all of us are important, then they say, why don't you chop for him? Let him go the other side, leave Omara alone. It's like we created a constituency personal to Holder. So such considerations is not good for the people of Uganda. So we need to redemarcate constituency. And by the way, that's in the Constitution, that's the responsibility of Electoral Commission. They need to go and redemarcate and say, do we really need more constitutions or constituencies or not? So to answer your question is to bite in terms of to speak members to express their views properly because of the numbers. I think that can be considered in the broader aspect of the number of constituencies that we need, and also in the context of the population that we have. Those are matters that we really need to consider going forward in terms of the existing laws, what the laws defines, what the law says, and what we can do to improve it. And again, that has a lot of consensus building. There are people who said we don't want the military now, we are now in a multi-party democracy, we have moved on, we don't want the soldiers in. Others are saying, these elders, why are they coming in? They should be looking after their grandchildren, why are they in the parliament? So there is a lot of issues of, Professor Sarah raised it very well, is the variety, what is the diversity. So for us, we've said diversity is our thing. Let's have everybody on board, the youth and whatever. Others views are saying, no. I think in the youth, we can find a youth elected in parliament, an elder is elected to parliament, so we don't need other elders. So that's a national debate that we must have, that the Constitutional Review Commission should go all around the country for us to have that feedback into the center so that people have that wider conversation. And that would be good for the country. And we must evolve, really.
Professor, if you'd allow me, because you touched something very critical. I keep answering the question of the size of parliament. And I also see even Honorable Mara seems to suggest the same. People who say so are partly right. The size of our parliament or the size of government is immaterial where government works. We are running away from making government work to addressing still the form. this parliament, the way it is a product of the concept of inclusiveness.
Exactly.
I talked here about being a woman. Are you going to negate the gains of inclusiveness we have done? The reason why we have women, because there are issues. Even if a man can represent women, a man cannot be a woman. So if we are going to talk, let a woman talk for a woman. Even if your mother is a woman, you are not a woman. If we talk about youth, even if all of us were youth, you are not a youth now. And the context you were youth is not today's context. Let the youth talk. If we are talking about the military, if you are talking about the elderly, that is the rationale in which the parliament expanded. Now, if we are saying for the sake of numbers, let's remove the numbers, what is more important? Inclusiveness or exclusiveness? Because we might go negate the achievements we have got. So what I'm for, first of all, I agree the method of the creation is very valid. Let the method be predictable, known, not the way we do it. But to attack numbers for the sake of it, it's very dangerous.
But
very dangerous.
I like what you've said, especially if it is a working parliament. There's no problem.
That's what I'm coming.
But if the parliament is with
the
numbers...
issue now, what I want us to be talking, even if they are 1,000, that's why they are party caucuses. Do they talk in the party? Do they generate consensus?
Do they deliver services?
So that you can say, we are 1,000, our consensus is this, I belong to this party. This is a position of the party. Then you say, Omara, go and present it. Okay. But here, hold on. Here, we see people wanting it to talk because you have set talking as a yardstick of performance.
Exactly.
Now you want filibustering, but not deliverance. I am for substantive issues. Timothy, for performance to happen in the public service, in the government, numbers have to work. She heads a department division. You don't expect her to perform, you don't expect to enroll more without giving her more lecturers.
Exactly.
You know, the moment you demand more services from government, you must pay for more people to deliver the services. So when you talk about the cost of public service, there is a cost to results. That's what we don't want to accept. We want to think running a lean government translates to results.
No.
To go to a theater, let me tell you, even if you have the best surgeon, there must be a nurse.
There are so
many people around. Yeah. So you cannot keep talking about demand for services while reducing on the people to deliver services. You are hurting government. Yes, parliament is big as we speak. Have we made it work? I would be happy when you tell me Honorable Omara does not even appear in a committee for a year. Hold him to account. Why is not there? Why?
Has the big number translated to services?
No, the big number, first of all, to represent means to speak for those issues that I belong. That's why I told you, if I'm a woman, allow me speak for a woman.
Okay, let me bring in a professor, because I think the thing we agree upon is parameters need to be set.
That one, I have no argument about it.
Yeah, thank you everyone. And I think parameters have been set. I think the problem we have is to look at a thing with hindsight without understanding the circumstances that brought it. And that's why I liked what Chris has said very well. You know, democracy is a discussion. Balancing a state, every country finds a formula that makes it work. If you are in a monolithic system, you can have your very lean system and it will be okay with you. If you have a very diverse system, you have to come up with a formula that caters for that diversity. And that's why one of the important things of this CISPOC was about understanding the different contexts. It was not to set a single yardstick of what parliamentary speakers should do, but to understand what the speakers were doing, how they are promoting fairness and everything within the context in which they find themselves. And one thing I like what Mr. Bore has said is the issue that as a country we have set talking as the yardstick. Therefore, how much I talk is the measure for representation. There's an article which was written, I think, on December 18th in the promotion of CISPOC, where actually the writer, and it was a New Vision paper, and it was a pull-out, and the New Vision reporter was saying that one of the reasons that led to CISPOC was the perception that Parliament had become a place of politicians and not a place for the public. And one of the parameters of making it a place for the public, which CISPOC was supposed to address, is the issue of representation, transparency, accessibility, accountability, and effectiveness. And of course, when they get the speakers together, it is to get them to show or to share how they are promoting these things and how they are going to promote these things. Of course, there are things we see. We see with regard to accountability, we see a number of people appearing before PAC. And of course, now we have the ages report. So that is there. And of course, done transparently before the papers. So there are those things that are doing. But representation is not just how much and how long people speak. Representation is how much do the people reflect the interests of the constituencies they are coming from. So if I come from a rural constituency and the first thing I do is articulate for interests, or I never speak about the interests of those people, then I'm not representing. And representation can be done in multiple ways. People can work in committees, people can work in caucuses, people can work. So did you raise the issues that you needed to raise, the issues affecting your people in whichever spaces of importance? It is not about how long you speak, and in any case, we actually never note who has spoken where. Because the media has also specialized in only capturing the few people. All these people will speak, but we shall see Honorable Somujunganda. Because the media has a particular thing in getting that. I think the other thing we need to talk about with regard to parliamentarians beyond representation of their people is how accessible are they? And now these are some of the mechanisms we need to see the speaker tell us, or have her office tell us how she's going to put in place. Because you go to many communities and they tell you their MPs ran away from them. They were voted in and they left. They will come back at the vote. So we don't know whether these stories are true, but in case they are
true. And the speaker is looking for them to attend the house.
They are not in the house. They are not in the constituency. So those are the mechanisms we need now to be asking the speaker 6 months from now to say you attend a CISPOC with your friends, these issues were raised. What mechanism do we have in place for you to track performance of your MOPs? And the effectiveness we talk about when we are talking about parliament is the effectiveness of representation. Parliament is not the one to do the service delivery, but they monitor and supervise. So we should be asking how many parliamentary teams have gone to inspect the other road, inspect the other facility, inspect, because they are there to monitor the executive. So I think when we ask about the effectiveness in service delivery, maybe it's being unfair, because that's a question we should put to the executive. But otherwise, I think we need to really have proper understandings of what parliament is about with the people who actually are critiquing parliament. Because many of the times we are holding them up for things which they are not actually supposed to be doing. I know it's partly because when they campaign, they say we are going to bring roads. So you want to see if there's no road, what's the MP doing? That's not the work of an MP.
No, even roads right now, Parliament is giving, because I think for the first time, Parliament decided that every district should be given an additional 1 billion.
1 billion
for
roads.
Exactly.
But you know, it's not the work of the MP
not an individual MP, but as Parliament we need to provide.
And then you supervise.
Exactly.
But the executive constructs the road.
That's right.
And you see, Professor, for Timothy's sake, if you go by, there are members of Parliament who never appear in the chamber. Their Parliament is the steps of Parliament, where you are, on TV. They drive in, park, steps. Hey, you know, Parliament is usually this house, drive back out. For you, that one has performed. But Omara, who is busy scrutinizing the budget,
let me
is
come
not
to
talking.
Honorable Jara, even as you give your last submission here. When you listen to the different speakers and the presiding officers that were there for the speakers conference, the experiences and the different practices they have there, what lessons did you draw out, and what can be taken into our parliament, especially the 11th parliament, for the Right Honorable Anita Among and the Right Honorable Thomas Taiwa?
Two things. One is that the 11th parliament is doing well. From what I have heard from the leadership that is being provided, I think the 11th parliament is doing well. But the other thing is that we have a long way to go. There are areas where we have to improve, and that's part of the learning. And you see, when the presiding officers met, the speakers and the presiding officers met, there are two layers of meetings. One is the conference, where the speakers and the presiding officers meet, and they talk about the thematic areas we have talked about, those set areas. And when our presiding officer, when the Speaker of our Parliament and the Deputy Speaker, in the course of this preparation, knowing very well the thematic areas, it's partly a commitment that you see we are hosting this, and we have to we are going to make sure we deliver to the promises. And so they have to take a lead role. And the other thing you need to, the other layer is where the standing committee sits. There is a standing committee under CISPO. And what they do is to discuss, they take decisions. And the decisions is about how they're running the organization, you know, who is suspended, and you know, a lot of advocacy. And from what I have heard, it's about making parliaments under the Commonwealth more effective. It's about getting much closure, learning from one another, building better relationship. So it's a platform that helps to enhance how every parliament should work. And there are set standards. So the question is going to be, how is our parliament going to make sure it operates within the standards, the set standards? So if we are not doing what the Commonwealth Speakers Conference is not expecting, there is a platform where we can be held accountable. The rest of the speakers will say, look, we are a family, and this is the standard. So why are you not doing in line with this? So they also have an opportunity of talking to one another, questioning certain decisions, helping one another, advising and learning from one another. So those two things that I consider key is that we are doing well from our own assessment and from the feedback we have got, but also we have a lot to learn. And that is the beauty of having that platform.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen and lady, we're almost at the tail end, but I'll give you parting shots, and I will start with the Honorable Wilson and come all the way to Professor.
Okay, thank you so much, Timothy, and our dear viewers. First, I congratulate the Right Honorable Speaker, the Right Honorable Anita Among, and her Deputy, Right Honorable Thomas Tayebwa, for hosting successfully the 27th CISPOC and setting a firm ground for Uganda to host the coming twin summits of NAM and G77 plus. A huge applause for the 11th Parliament, for the confidence we have had, for showcasing our beauty and beauty of the country, and for setting a firm ground for hosting another upcoming successful. And I wish you Happy New Year, and God bless you.
Thank you very much. Chris?
We want to be the lizard to really nod our heads. If no one else, we must say yes. Parliamentary diplomacy at work. The diplomat is here. Parliamentary diplomacy at work for the country. And that is very, very important. You need to be a hater, not to see what the speaker has done. You need to be a hater.
A serious one.
A serious hater. And therefore, you need to be prayed for, because it might consume you. It might kill you. We need you. Just admit that it has happened, it's good for us, our country. CISPOC was a very wonderful event, and let's look forward to receive NAM and G77. But most important, hold the Parliament to account. Every other day say, please hold my members to account, but on informed positions. Don't simply tell them they are useless, they are what. If you go by that, talking is part of an MP. But MPs are more effective when they know what they call bargaining. Because they represent those issues for which they belong, but also they have a national duty. So a better MP may be the one who tells, Honorable Wilson, in the budget this year, government has prioritized water, boreholes, and health centers. Okay, you want a health center, I also want. But okay, this year, you take the boreholes. Allow me to take a health center. Then next year, you take the health centers, I take a borehole. That can only be a product of a man who knows how to bargain, who knows how to negotiate. These are the skills we need to give the members of Parliament. Unfortunately, we are saying filibusters are the star performance. And I've told you, I am with them every day. They are those who talk for the good, but they are members who have turned the steps of Parliament as the parliamentary chambers. Because they are appealing to you now. They are running away from the duty. They come to drive in to get an interview from you and drive away, leaving Mapinduzi with the speaker. Item this bill, article this, they are few. Because for them, they have performed to the expectations of the public.
Yeah.
So you have a duty to hold them accountable. I request you to be fair, objective, and well-intentioned when holding them to account.
Thank you very much. Honorable Mara.
Timothy, just like Honorable Wilson, I just really want to congratulate the Right Honorable Speaker and the Deputy Speaker for a fantastic and a successful Speakers Conference. By the way, that is our first as a Parliament. It's the biggest gatherings of speakers. And my appeal also to them is that the outcome of the conference, the resolutions of that conference, we can as a Parliament have a moment to really discuss it, because remember, this is a Speakers Conference. The parliamentarians who were there were the guests of the Speaker, and also to host the delegates. So the resolution of that conference should be properly embedded within the things that we do as a Parliament. As she said, she's been invited to the House of Commons. As I mentioned before, the key issues why the Speaker of the House of Commons didn't come was on account of the law that we passed on LGBTQ. I believe that, and I want to appeal to her to go and present the Matters Uganda on the subject, and hopefully they will be able to appreciate our ideological differences on such matters, and also to respect
our legislative supremacy.
Exactly. As a Parliament, we have the supremacy of making laws. And so I wish her good luck and blessings.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Jara.
Well, the conference ended, but you need to know that this is not the only activity, major activity that the 11th Parliament is prepared to remember. We have this, and I think we were supposed to have the Pan-African Parliament.
It is coming?
It's coming. We were supposed to have the Pan-African Parliament last year in October, but because of a few administrative, adjustments and all that, it has been pushed. So now we have concluded with this. We are going to have another big event bringing almost 500 members of Parliament from across Africa coming to Uganda. And in the next few days or so, we have NAM. So that tells a lot about our position in the region, but also our position in Africa and globally. And I think we need to continue building on that. We need to give that image, and that should also help us reflect deeply and deal with some of the things that internally, people talk about. And because outside, we are being projected differently. And that is a big advantage to Uganda as a country. So I want to congratulate again our leadership, and when we have NAM in the next few days or so, it will still be another big milestone for this country. So we need to, there are things that should unite us. And again, when you look at our Parliament, the opposition and the ruling party and those independent members of Parliament, when you see how we got united in preparing this, it tells you a lot about how we should look at the country and how we should be united at some point when we want to give one message for the country. So that should be the spirit.
Thank you very much. Lastly, Professor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Timothy and colleagues. I would also like to begin by congratulating the Speaker and her Deputy for a successful conference. There's one thing the Speaker said in her opening remarks, that Ugandans were welcoming people. And the colleagues have talked about Uganda being a destination of very many conferences. It is a testament to the confidence others have in us. but also from where we sit, it is also a testament of how Ugandans are very welcoming, not just for conferences and guests, but also if you are to talk about the numbers of students coming to higher education institutions, to the number of academic conferences that take place, to the number of research, collaborative research projects. Because people find our systems easier to navigate, whether you're talking about ethical committees, whether you're talking about National Council of Higher Education. So we have put in place things that make it easy for Ugandans to collaborate with others. And I think these things need to be amplified. I think locally from this conference, the Speaker and her deputy have a task, as Mr. Bore has said, to give, I don't know whether to call it give the MPs skills, but also I think to change the mindset of the public about MPs and MPs' expectations. We in villages expect the MPs to foot all our bills for burials, all our bills for weddings, all our bills for school fees. They must find jobs for all our children, and if they find for one person's family and not another one. So at the end of the day, yes, we have saddled MPs and of course church fundraising.
Building churches.
So we have saddled MPs with a big burden that actually it is making it difficult for MPs to do their work. And that causes maybe the reason MPs disappear from the communities. So I think, I hope, I don't know whether it was touched by CISPOC, but even with the Pan-African Parliament, you're going to have the next meeting. I think as parliamentarians headed by the Speaker and the Deputy, you have a duty to change this mindset. Otherwise, it's going to push up the cost of doing business as representatives of the people. But I think beyond that, I think it was a successful conference, and we take a number of lessons. And particularly for me, in view of the other conferences that are coming, as members have said here, these are the first lens to people seeing a country, from which you have a follow-up of tourist visits and recommendations, or leisure trips and recommendations to others. I think this means as the people concerned, like maybe parliamentarians and NAM, are doing the conferences, the associated ministries also need to do their work. We are talking about ministries like trade, how do we promote our opportunities, ministries of tourism, things like infrastructure, and by infrastructure we're not just talking about roads. How are our hoteliers trained to engage with foreigners? I know the big team leaders will be in the Serena and the rest. But their small timers may end up in a hotel on Kampala Road, somewhere in Nakasero. So are we engaging, for example, with the hotel industry to be able to receive these people? Are we engaging with the other traders and other maybe chambers of commerce? So the work is still there, because this shows the confidence people have put in Uganda is going to continue to grow. And I hope you also know that Kampala is considered Africa's social capital. Yeah, because one place you party 24 hours.
A city that doesn't sleep.
A city that doesn't sleep. And as people said, there are those who want to see Kampala. They don't want to see the gorillas. They want to see Kampala in the night.
In the night.
So, and they know that when they see Kampala in the night, they will go back to their hotels alive. That's very, very important for tourism. So those of you who are organizing these things need to make sure that all the related things are concerned. Otherwise, thank you very much, and I appreciate everything the Speaker and Deputy Speaker have done, and we pray for more. Thank you.
Let me read some of this feedback. Someone sends in a text and says, trim the number of parliamentarians. Mr. Chris Obore is totally missing the importance of scale and efficiency. There is a point at which the return to increase MPs starts to diminish. I think Uganda has passed the point of diminishing returns. For example, if the time for a session is fixed, there's only so much useful talk that can be done. The basic is economics, not politics, okay? Good evening, Timothy. Thank you for the program. Sometimes when people from government sides seem to present everything in the country right, they want to make everyone believe that everything is okay in the country, yet for certain things, they are not going well, and no one disapproves them. Otherwise, thank you for the show. This is Godwin from Barra. Finally, this is Santos, John Santos. Thank you for the discussion. In my opinion, the Commonwealth Speakers Conference was a big success, given that it came after a gallant of MPs just passed the homosexuality law. Big number of speakers that attended were a vote of confidence for the Parliament. Obviously, the bumper stickers are way, but who needs them anyway? Big up to the speaker. Nalongo, we love you. Thank you very much for the messages coming through.
Nengalo for Nalongo.
I want to thank Honorable Wilson. Chris, thank you for coming through. Honorable Mara, Honorable Jara, Professor Sarah, thank you for coming through. To the team that has made today possible, the production team behind there have made today possible, but also the non-aligned movement, the 19th summit will be happening next week, and also the third South Summit will be happening next week. So we'll be there to engage and show you exactly what will be happening. But we'll end it this way. The biggest room in the world is the room of improvement. Good morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Professor.
Economic focus. In response to the era of economic globalization, the non-aligned movement has expanded its focus beyond political ideals to advocate for a more equitable international economic order. The movement recognizes the need for economic cooperation and development initiatives that benefit all member states, particularly those in the developing world.
UBC, inspiring Uganda. The official broadcaster of Non-Aligned Movement and G77 Summits 2024. Inspiring Uganda. The official broadcaster of Non-Aligned Movement and G77 Summits 2024. UBC, inspiring Uganda. The official broadcaster of Non-Aligned Movement.
I mean, the Americans are always going to say, oh, you're a separatist and secessionist, because those are dirty words in the U.S. itself. I mean, witness the current political debate in Washington. The issue here is really like the Dayton Peace Agreement and its annexes, one of which is the Bosnian Constitution. They're public record. They can be looked up online. The originals managed to get lost somehow, and don't, you know, that's really on the head of the so-called international community. But they're very, very clear and very explicit as to what's supposed to be taking place. And there's no room for some kind of federal government. There's no room all of these authorities, the courts, and so on and so forth, things that have been imposed unilaterally by this self-proclaimed high representative who doesn't represent anybody in particular, whose authority is delegated by the US and the EU because they exist. This was supposed to be like a temporary oversight institution for year 2, 5, not 30. The Dayton Peace Agreement was signed in 1995. It is now 2024. Mm-hmm. And they're saying, oh, well, you're violating the sovereignty of Bosnia. I'm sorry, what sovereignty? You're literally running this country as a sock puppet. And you're telling the only functioning entity in it, because the Federation is deeply dysfunctional, and nobody seems to care. Nobody in the West seems to give a damn, pardon my French. And instead, the U.S. Embassy is trying to, look, they're trying to intimidate the Serbs, which is not going to work and hasn't. But the worst part about this is that they're encouraging the most militant, detached from reality elements among the Bosnian Muslims specifically once again, because this is what happened in 1992, starting a war they will expect somebody else to fight for them. And the last time this happened, and I was there, it resulted in 100,000 dead people and Bosnia reduced to ruins. And the U.S. Embassy and the European Union are promoting this again.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. Nebojša Malić, Serbian-American journalist, blogger, and anti-war columnist. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Bangladesh's government is not bothered about the U.S. and U.K.'s criticism of its general elections that handed Sheikh Hasina a fourth straight term as prime minister. That's according to the Bangladesh foreign minister.
We're not bothered about those. Our people have given a mandate in our favor. Those came and said the election was held in an impartial, transparent, credible and violence-free manner.
Sheikh Hasina has made a comeback in Bangladesh, and this in an election which saw a historically low voter turnout. But this was pretty obvious, and there's no surprise there, since the main opposition party in Bangladesh, way back in November, Bangladesh Nationalist Party, BNP, they had announced a boycott of this election. And they did so because they said that the Hasina government was persecuting the opposition members. In fact, they accused the Hasina government of putting some 20,000 odd opposition members behind bars after they organized nationwide protests, saying that there was economic and cost of living crisis under Hasina government. Now, whatever said and done, Hasina has made a comeback. She has become the longest serving Prime Minister of Bangladesh, and she's been getting congratulatory messages from across the world. But not the US, not the West. They have been upset.
The United States remains concerned by the arrests of thousands of political opposition members and by reports of irregularities on Election Day. The United States shares the view with other observers that these elections were not free or fair, and we regret that not all parties participated.
Canada expresses its disappointment that this electoral process has fallen short of the principles of democracy and freedom, and calls on the relevant authorities to work transparently with all parties to move forward towards democracy, respect of human rights and fundamental freedoms.
But let me point out here that Bangladesh elections, they were monitored by around 127 international observers, which also included countries like the US and Russia. Now, the US observer on record has gone on to say that the Bangladesh elections were free and fair. They'd also given a clean sheet of sorts to the elections that were held in Bangladesh. So really there's a lot of discrepancy in what the statement is coming from the US and what their own observer who monitored the Bangladesh election was saying. Having said that, now there was also a Russian observer there who has categorically said that if the US isn't satisfied with the elections, the results, they have the power to destabilize Bangladesh. Now, that is something that Sheikh Hasina herself has been saying time and again. She's gone on to say on record that the US has been trying to meddle in the internal politics of Bangladesh. She's also gone on to say that the US has been trying to topple her government. Now, whatever said and done, she has got another term, and she has been getting congratulatory messages from across the world, including her two superpower neighbors.
As a friendly neighbor, China firmly supports Bangladesh in advancing various post-election political agendas in accordance with the law, and is willing to work with the new government of Bangladesh. China is willing, on the basis of mutual respect, equality, mutual benefit and non-interference in internal affairs, to work together with the new government of Bangladesh to further enhance traditional friendship.
I spoke to Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and congratulated her on her victory for a historic fourth consecutive term in the parliamentary elections. I also congratulate the people of Bangladesh for the successful conduct of elections. We are committed to further strengthen our enduring and people-centric partnership with Bangladesh.
Bangladesh elections and the results have caught the attention of the world. Also very interesting because the way Bangladesh is placed in Asia. It's strategically placed between two Asian superpowers, India and China. And let me point out that Bangladesh has done a very, very interesting rather good balancing act between the two countries. Now, also